Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Forgotten Feminists. Forgotten Feminists is sponsored by The Spectator. As the longest running magazine in the world, The Spectator believes that journalism must be witty and insightful, that ideas should be discussed without the constant threat of cancellation. The Spectator never confuses the serious with the dull. It isn't right-wing, it isn't left-wing. It believes in challenging, informing, and entertaining readers. Since its foundation in 1828, its mission has been to convey intelligence, not ideology. Sign up today and you'll receive 3 free months of both the print and digital magazine, plus a free Spectator hat. Just use the offer code Yasmine at checkout to redeem the special offer just for listeners of Forgotten Feminists. Thanks again.
Welcome, welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here at Forgotten Feminists. Today, our guest is Amal. Amal, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Yasmine. So good to be here.
So for those of you who read the little blurb, Amal grew up in Saudi Arabia, and she came to Canada with a Saudi Arabian mindset. But since then, she has blossomed and bloomed into her own mindset, not controlled by any cultures or traditions. And she's here to tell us all about her story. So Amal, I wanted to start off with asking you about, in your blog, you refer to Saudi Arabia as the kingdom of men.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually would like you to expand on that. Why are you calling it the kingdom of men? Tell me what it was like for you as a young girl growing up in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, wow, like I love it. We're diving in the deep end right away. So good. See, like now I look at it and I see it as the kingdom of men. When I grew up, everything was like normal. I always tell people, like, I had a very ordinary childhood. I was doing what everybody my age was doing. Boys were doing everything like boys can do. So it was all ordinary. It was like how life was. So it wasn't until like later on and reflecting back that I was like, some things were actually not as equal as they looked or perceived, or were not at the queen throne that we're treated as in Saudi Arabia. I grew up with so much love and empowerment. I was fortunate to have like parents that were very loving. I'm the oldest sister to 8 incredible siblings. And
when you talk about those differences that you didn't notice when you were growing up, I guess the gender differences were sort of normalized. It wasn't a big deal that you couldn't drive because none of your friends could drive either, for example. But now looking back on it and comparing the childhood, sort of for our viewers who don't know what it's like to grow up in Saudi Arabia, can you tell us, like, what's it like for a girl in Saudi Arabia and how is that different from a girl in Canada?
Yeah, well, and I have this like memory of when I was like maybe 5 years old, and we were on a religious trip, my mom and I and her uncle. And I remember the sheikh, which is our version of the priest. Like I had this very long, beautiful hair. Like it's still very beautiful, but it was like very long and shiny. And my mom used to put a lot of henna in my hair, like every couple of months. So it's just like radiant and healthy. And this sheikh asked my mom, like, he said, like, is she your daughter? And she said, yes. And he said, cover her hair.
At 5 years old.
Yeah. And like, I look back now and I realize that like at that moment I was sexualized, like my hair was sexualized. I'm a little bit grossed out by like this older man looking at me, a child, and telling my mom to cover my hair. But I remember at that time, I was like, my mom was like, oh, your hair is so beautiful. Like we have to cut, like the sheikh is asking that we cover it. And I just like felt so beautiful. Like, you know, like, oh, like my hair is so beautiful. Like it's so precious. It needs to be covered. And yeah, and I think that's not different than many of the people that grew up here in terms of like what they value and what they don't value here. But this is what was valued where I grew up. Yeah.
So when you talk about it being creepy that this old man was sexualizing you at 5 years old, that's something that you recognize now as an adult, but as a kid, you took it as a positive statement that you need to cover your hair.
It's not just like as an adult now I look back and I see it creepy. I think it's also the privilege of having the opportunity to have my own thoughts and be in a place where having your own thoughts is accepted, or whatever your thoughts are accepted, versus the conformity in one and ideology, and whether that, like you could conform to a lot of the parts of the ideology, but you could choose to disagree on some of the things and you would still be counted like against the thing. Like people watch my TED Talk that I gave in 2017 about taking off the hijab, and it was circling on WhatsApp as Amal al-Huwaishil went atheist. Like I was talking about taking off the hijab. I was talking about choice, and I shared my story taking off the hijab, and that was equal to gone atheist. And so it's interesting how it's just like one line of thought, and if you disagree with one part or all parts, you're shunned and you don't belong.
Yeah, that's what happened to me too. When I took off my hijab, that was the point when my mom said, well, I'll have to make sure that you're killed before you become kafra, before you become an infidel, an unbeliever, because at that point she needed to protect herself. She felt like I can't be punished for eternity for having a daughter who is a non-believer. So I need to sort of repent to make sure that you're killed before that day happens. And at that moment I was shocked, because I had I didn't even cross my mind to not be a Muslim. I just didn't want to wear hijab anymore. That's all, you know. But yeah, like you say, it's quite dominating. Like it's almost all or nothing sometimes. So you didn't start wearing it at 5 years old though, did you?
Well, I wore the hijab, like I covered my hair during that trip. I think I kept it on for a while, but then I fully covered up when I was in 3rd grade. And it was like the classic, like I wasn't the outlier of my class. It was the last day of class, and it was like, I want to go like covering my face. And it was like, I look back and I'm like, of course I wanted to do what the adults were doing. Of course I wanted to do what my peers were praised by my teachers for doing. Like, you're praised for doing all of that. And it's kind of like, you're a woman now, you're a grown up, and you're like, yes, I am.
Yes.
And yeah, so there's those pieces that I look back at from my perspective today and see as that.
So other than the hijab, growing up as a girl in Saudi Arabia, we hear a lot about the guardianship laws and the restrictions and how MBS is loosening some of those restrictions now. But when you were growing up, all of those restrictions were in place. So, you know, what were those restrictions? So you had to go to an all-girl school. I assume there were no boys at the school you were going to. So, you know, female sections and male sections of the restaurants, and, you know, like tell us a little bit about just the, you know, the gender differences in Saudi Arabia.
I actually, like in my TED Talk, I start my talk saying, like, if we were in Saudi Arabia right now, like half of you would be here and the other half of you would be here with this massive partition in between. So yes, like everything was segregated. Like banks would have 2 gates, one for men, one for women. and the two shall never meet. Like, I think, I don't remember if it was like the religious police or another, like the work ministry that would go around workplaces. Puppies are excited. That would go around workplaces and check the isolation of like females versus males in a company. So that was like one. Yes, restaurants used to be just like either for singles, and by singles I mean men, or families. And the families, one would have partitions, and the server will come by the door, and the father or the brother or the husband or whoever, male guardian or male present, will go out to grab the food and bring it to put it on the table. One story was coming up for me when you first started asking your question. The guardianship, that like the part of that impacted me the most was the permission to go study abroad. So I like, in my time right now, it is loosened. In theory, like culturally, I don't know how much of that is still accepted or people are still digesting accepting it. When I filed for divorce, I'm like jumping around.
Oh, now you've gone too fast.
Yeah.
So
but let me like just talk about the permission. I was like in the fight for divorce around 2 years, and I couldn't leave Saudi Arabia because even though that I'm filing for divorce, my male guardian is my husband. Mm-hmm. And so I needed to get that divorce first so that my father becomes my male guardian so that I can leave and go study abroad. And I'm still very conflicted. Like, I'm here with this, I have this piece of paper, it's like in my baggage, and it's this piece of paper that's signed by my dad, by the police department, by the mayor of my hometown, and stamped by the court. And it like says, like, I, Amal, male guardian, like my dad, permit her to go study in Canada to study business. Mm-hmm. So that paper allowed me to go study. That paper allows me to go study business in particular. So like I would need to get another permission to change majors as per not from the university. The university doesn't care here in Canada, but when it comes to the permissions from the male guardian. And until this moment, I'm very conflicted around this piece of paper. Like, it granted me freedom, but it also reminds me that I wasn't free. Like, my dad empowered me and signed it in a place where not a lot of men are willing to do that. Yeah, it just like, it makes me think of like, can anybody be treated as a minor for the entirety of their life? And that was my reality. Like, I never saw something different or the potentiality, like that. I've never saw that there's something wrong with that. Like, I was like, this is weird, but like never sat and I was like, this needs to change. Like, and the hard part is, that until today, like sometimes I still catch myself needing permission, waiting for a tap on my shoulder from somebody or someone to like go for it or pursue that thing that I'm desiring. And the hardest part is to meet women who were born and raised in Canada. Every person that I've met who is socialized as female, even in the West, are struggling with the same thing. Like a research that I read, and I think I'm quoting, I forgot her title. It was the We for She conference in 2019, October. She works for the BC government as the equity and diversity minister or something. Like, I don't remember her title. I'm happy to like refer that for people's reference. She quoted a research that men would run for politics being tapped on the shoulder once, And while women would need to be asked to run for politics upwards of 7 times.
We might not want to.
Masha, can I
And I
get you
thought-
to mute yourself,
Yes,
please?
I apologize. I thought I was muted. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
And I thought that was horrifying. And it made me feel like, oh, I am not that fucked up, you know? Like, oh,
You're not.
Like this is like a bigger game than just Saudi Arabia. Like I experienced the extreme part. But
Yes,
it hasn't,
but there's a very big difference between overcoming your personal fears or overcoming socialized to be nice or agreeable or any of those things, and then actually having full-on governmental restrictions.
Yeah, systematic,
like law enforcement
yeah.
stopping you. Like that's very different, because there is the potential for women. You know, I'm thinking of Sheryl Sandberg, and that's really what all that she is talking about when she talks about leaning in and how women need to be more assertive and sitting at the table, not waiting till somebody invites us to sit at the table and all that stuff. So there is the potential for every woman in the West to be able to do that. But the same potential isn't there for women in countries like Saudi Arabia that restrict them, truly restrict them. It's not just a mental restriction, but it's physical restrictions as well.
Yeah, it's systematic.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's really great that your father was willing to open that gate for you. I understand what you mean when you talk about it being sort of bittersweet. It's great, but it's kind of that reminder. But it's also a reminder that there's so many other women whose dads are not like that. You know, when I was teaching in Qatar, I had a student who would saunter into class late with Starbucks for all of her friends. And I pulled her into my office one day and I said, it's like you don't even want to be here. Do you even want to, why are you taking this class? Do you even want to be here? And she said, no, I don't. And I was like, what? I was really taken aback. And then it's exactly what you just described. So she was married and her husband had signed the papers for her to study specifically office administration or whatever it was that she was doing, something in business. And she didn't want to study it anymore, but he was punishing her by not allowing her to do anything else. And she went to her father for help, and her father said, he's your husband, you're his business. I can't override his decisions. But this was his way of punishing her to keep her in line. And, you know, it's kind of what you're describing there, except that her dad was not nearly as, you know, didn't have a heart like your dad. So it's great that with your work today, you're focusing a lot on bringing attention to other women that are in situations like that and helping them to overcome. But I wanted to just rewind a little bit. You talked about your marriage a little bit. In your blog, you called it a fixed marriage rather than an arranged marriage. And you wrote a pretty, you know, heart-wrenching, I guess, explanation of some parts of that marriage. And I wanted to read a little bit of it to you and then ask you to talk to us about just the marriage, because I think that there's a lot of restrictions around us, not just as a daughter, but then as a wife as well. A year and some months before I arrived in Canada, I was kidnapped by my ex-husband after I filed for divorce. I don't remember much from the 7 days with him, but I vividly remember him telling me that he would rather cripple me and take care of me for the rest of his life rather than divorce me, that he would rather walk me in a wheelchair, clean my body, and change my sheets rather than let me go and be in the hands of another man. I vividly remember him sitting on my chest, choking me, leaving a mark on my neck, a mark that the court later never cared for or even acknowledged. So these are the courts in Saudi Arabia. They did not care that he had physically abused you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about that experience?
Mm-hmm. I think maybe that goes back to what's normalized. Like, it was like a minor injury, you know? It wasn't like broken teeth or what have you. So I think it's like a part of like, yeah, that happens. Don't do that. That's how things are handled, or like just brushed off. And also just like legally, even though that I'm like fighting for divorce, I'm still his wife. So yeah.
So because you're his wife, they felt that he had the right to do that.
Well, like, it's not considered kidnapping because I'm his wife.
But to choke you and leave marks on your neck.
I was in a female compound, so I was living in a different city, and he arrived. I don't know if I mentioned this in the blog or not, but Usama, the guy that was like the guard of the door of all names, his name is Usama. He calls me, and my dad have dropped me to this compound many times. And he calls me and he says, I have a man here who's saying like your husband, and he's like a little bit in like questioning. And the next thing I know is that my ex is talking on the phone, and he's like, surprise, I'm just here to surprise you, as if like we're not just in court a week before. And yeah, sorry, I'm distracted by the garlic. And I just think of Usama. I hanged up and I called my dad, and dad was like, I'm 4 hours away. I can't come. Just talk to him. We'll be fine. And Usama calling me right away and saying, please, we can't handle a scandal. He's threatening to call the police. You are his wife. Like, we can't handle this. Please come downstairs. Yeah, and it was just like left between myself and being dragged by the police. So I just like went down myself. Yeah, I think of my time at court when I met so many women. This is my first time really seeing the system. Like, I was like in my own happy bubble and my own happy life until being at court. And so I grew up in the same city that Ghada from last week grew up. And we have two courts. There is the government court and there is the Shia court. And the Shia court is actually an old house. So the waiting room for women is a kitchen. And
how apt.
There's like a broken sink that doesn't work and it's dirty, and the cupboards of the kitchen are there, and it's so hot. And you're sitting there, it was Ramadan, and we're fasting, and he was taking advantage of the system that if you don't show up the first time, it's fine. If you don't show up the second time, it's fine. The third time, if you don't show up, they'll send you the police to get you. But he will always show up on the third appointment. And it was, I just like remember like standing with my mom, like we're holding shoulders and we're like, he's not gonna come. It was the second appointment. So we went anyways, knowing that he's not gonna come. And I'm just looking at those girls and women in court. Like some of them were like so oppressed, defeated by the system, and so many, like including myself, it felt like I had no one to stand up for me. They had no one to stand up for them. Like I had my dad, my mom, like my family was with me in this, like in this divorce. And it felt like there was nothing like to penetrate through the system that like needed his approval or his presence or whatever. Mind you that the Sunni, if it was the government, this is the complication that I often don't talk about. The our religious court would need to wait for him. The government one would have divorced me right away. And this is actually the divorce I got when I was able to leave Canada. I was in Canada in the middle of class when I got the actual religious divorce. So if I, just to clarify that for anybody, when I got the government divorce, it's still religious divorce, like it's still Sharia law is the law of Saudi Arabia, but given like we're Shia, so it was like a different sect. So we need our own priest, our own sheikh to like complete the divorce. And with him, it was, if I got this divorce from the government, the sheikhs from our religious court would have less power to like force him. And they'd be like, well, you got the government divorce, so like we can't help you anymore. So they will also be checked out. And there are many girls who are called like she's not divorced or like
hanging.
With the government divorce, I can't get married again to somebody from my sect, which we obviously wanted that. Like I was on with like, I'm gonna get divorced. I'm like, still, I was just turning 23 and I was like, I'm so young, like I'll get married. It was just like, yeah.
So there's a real sense of possession going on. Like obviously from what I read there, the way he was talking about how he would rather all of these things as opposed to you being with another man. And I saw him said that to me too. He said, I'll cut up your face so that you'll never be attractive to another man, because they just can't, they think of us as their property. And so letting go of us means that we could potentially be with another man. And it was something that they just can't handle. But it's like the court systems, whether it's Sharia, Sunni, Shia, it doesn't matter. The court systems there kind of have that same idea of possession in the same way that they're kind of okay with him beating you, because it's like, you're his wife, you know, or even Osama at the door when he said, you have to come because you're his wife. Like, it's like everything around you, all of the structures are in place to support this idea of you as a possession that belongs to him. So I can, you know, I just want to just take a moment to say like how amazing it is that you have flourished into this woman today that does not at all in any way, shape or form give off any kind of sense that you're possessed by anybody. You're so definitely 100% your own woman. And let's talk about that journey, that huge difference between normalizing, sort of accepting, not even questioning, being part of such a gender segregated society, being a possession of a man, the guardianship laws, even when it's your dad and he's a good man, but still you are controlled by a male in your life, to go from that Amal to the one who did the TED Talk and to the one who's sitting in front of me here today. I know that that would have been a very, very long road, but maybe there are some points along that road that you want to highlight for us, like just some moments where you felt like this was, that you felt like, no, I'm going to take this turn in the road. I'm going to take this different path. And what has that meant for you, you know, emotionally as a person? How did that affect you, and psychologically, emotionally, and just like your identity? And then how did that affect your friends and family around you, those decisions that you made?
Yeah. What loaded 10,000 questions? Great questions though. Maybe I'll start with rewinding to that experience of the divorce and also not seeing it for it was until later. So like the reflection, looking back, rather than in the moment knowing that that was wrong fully, and to kind of like talk about the safety mechanism that like many survivors adopt to, of like forgetting a lot of the details, or just like fawn nervous system response, which is like the being nice or playing it's okay. Like I was fine. Like there was no crashing. Like my nervous system went into the like, we gotta be safe. So everything was like, I'm nice, I'm good, we're good. And even like maybe like even after I filed for divorce and I felt I needed to wear this cape, that I'm strong, that I'm fine. Like I was 17 when I graduated high school. I was like, I want to go study abroad. And it was just like the reality that I am at the age of getting married. So I stayed and engaged at 18, married at 19, and all of that. And there I was, like 23, filing for divorce, and like so much uncertainty ahead. But I really want to speak to that like voice inside of me that was like, this is not for us. And like it wasn't like I'm thinking about it. Should I leave? Should I stay? It was like, we're leaving. Like just, and I listened. And I just like want to speak to that for anybody that is like justifying themselves out of a decision, maybe because they're trying to suppress this like inner knowing, because we already know the answers. We don't need somebody to tell us. And I think I've had a connection to it since I was then. Like my strong boundaries, like the anger, like, So I'm gonna like draw to that from the trust inside, courage to face uncertainties and whatever things that are very unknown, and trusting that I'll be okay at the end. Like, I think the key for me is like, I don't know, like trust sandwich or courage sandwich. I don't know, like trust, courage in the middle.
I'm really glad you're talking about this, because I get letters, like I am flooded with letters where it's women talking about exactly this. Like they want to get out of the situation that they're in, but they're too scared because the cost of making that decision that they know that they have to make is really high. You know, for some, it could be losing their kids, losing their family, losing their lives in some cases, potentially. So I totally agree with you that you have to just follow your heart and just deal with whatever happens, but you have to move forward. You can't stay in that space where you know you don't belong. But it's definitely a tough one for someone to go through. So for you, was there a lot of, was there any negative backlash for making those decisions?
The divorce, not, except for the consequences that happened. But like, I think to go back to your like first question, when I first moved to Canada, I was like, ugh, like the Lost West. Like, I was like, they're wasting their lives without worshiping God. I felt superior to be knowing of God. I felt better. And a part of me knew that they were judging me for being covered. And I'm like, they don't know any better. Like, poor women, like showing so much skin, and while the men covered more skin, anyways. And yeah, and it was just like, oh, like they're just products of their environment.
But I'm not.
That's the thing. It's much easier to project, to point at people, to be like, this person's doing it wrong. They're not understanding what they need to do, and not to look in or to reflect or really like dive into our demons or like belief systems, or even discover our magics, like to allow that, for that untamed self-expression to come out when we're like bogged by 10,000 things that we thought is normal. Yeah, so it's like a long process of feeling, questioning, deciding what's mine, what's not mine. And I think the scary part, or the challenging part, when you know you're meant for a bigger stage, like, you know, when it's not like I'm gonna be in my community with my family and just pluck away at my life and my community, when you know that like you're meant for a bigger stage, you're meant to speak, you're meant to write, you know, when you speak, people listen, you know, your writing is powerful. Like, that's my story with it. And I just kept on being pulled to that. And I'm like, no, that's too dangerous. Like, standing on a stage and talking about the things, like from my first year in university, I was nominated to give the TEDx talk. And I was like, nah, like, not gonna do that. Like, what would I talk about? And why would I talk about those things? And it took me until third year to like apply and get accepted and all the things. And building up to the talk, I was having dreams the week before my TED talk. I was having dreams of, I finished the talk, the curtains are closed, and I taste the blood in my mouth of like of what could happen in the future. And yeah, so it was I did the talk and I never shared it. I never posted about it. I never told it. Like, I posted a picture of me on the TEDx stage and I was like, last Thursday. And that was it. The link came out. I never shared it. I never told anybody about it. I would go to coffee shops and people would be like, you gave a TED talk. I was there. I watched the link, and I'd like freak out. And in the same time, a part of me was watching the talk and watching the number of views. Like, a part of me wanted it to reach people, and a part of me wanted it to stay hidden and buried in the depths of the interwebs and never be found, especially by my family or my community. And Lord and behold, I was training for the Ironman in 2018. And I had done a 10K run that day, and I was just leaving the gym from the swimming pool. I obviously didn't learn how to swim when I was in Saudi Arabia. So I was like learning to swim, like running came easy. But it was the swimming, and I was like leaving the gym so frustrated with myself, My hair smelled like chlorine. I was doing the breaststrokes and I was going nowhere in the pool. And all I could think about is like, oh, like I was gonna meet a friend later and I was gonna brag about like my good run and gonna rant about all of the pool time. All of this to say is that I'm getting on the bus and my phone start binging, 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 and I'm opening it and it's messages from my brother. It's like link of the talk, pictures from my website, other things that I like made and had, and I like even like didn't even consider that it will like be found or circulated or whatever it was. And I don't remember the bus ride. I just like remember being home, laying on the couch, playing my TED Talk on repeat, trying to listen to every single word on how my parents or my siblings heard every word and interpreted every word and all of that. Yeah, so backlash, you can find it in my TED Talk. Like there's 3 times more dislikes than there is likes. The comments are hate speech, harassment, promises that I'll end up burning in hell. Those comments were made by old school friends, family members, my community, and the unsaid things on the talks. Like I received death threats as well. And it's the nature, unfortunately, of living out loud. And I think this is my journey, because I'm like always being pulled between like engineering my life to be small and hide and living out loud and speaking the things I want to speak about and the things that like have touched me personally. And I see for women, vulva-bodied people, for all people that we can move through in our humanity. That is so unique because it's through from my perspective, through my lived experience, and through the books and programs and certifications that I've done. But I need to live out loud. I can't engineer smallness or shrink myself.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So that's important to note, that even though there is backlash, you know, all the way up until death threats, obviously there's no regrets. You are living your true self. You are the Amal that you are meant to be. And, you know, you just have to, the hate that they throw at us is to keep us small, as you were describing it. You know, they want to scare you into submission. And the key is to not let fear control you and to just continue moving forward and living out loud, like you said. So that's beautiful. I love that. Thank you.
I think it's also like complex, like there is the fear and there is the honoring of like that, like my relationship to my family is dear to my heart, and honoring the fact that I live here and my choices are celebrated in the West and they're not in my community. And not just that they're not celebrated, by my family, my siblings, my sister have received bullying or harassment because of my action. And so it's that, like, it's that I care about, that how can I live and protect them? Or it's very hard. And I don't say it's easy or just like push through. It's a conversation that I have to mitigate every day with myself. And like my relationship with my family is beautiful and is still strong. And there is always like that hand on my heart of like, oh, like, if I stand on stage and talk about this thing, what would they think? Because I could say that I don't care about anybody else, but I care about what my mom, dad, and siblings feel and think of me. I'm the oldest sister. I inherited the role model position for that all old siblings have. And how can we like live your life, respect your life and respect mine, when it's only being introduced in Saudi Arabia to respect others' choices? Like now, if a woman is not wearing the hijab, you can't say anything. It used to be like, you can do all the things. And now that's kind of, I kind of like that is like, you can't say anything. It's kind of like on the extreme end, but I'm like, I'm okay with that. Like, yeah, a little bit double standards, but
It's still progress. It's definitely progress. And I think it's important that you're not stopping your personal progress, but that you're finding a way to maneuver and manage and still move forward. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I share one last story?
Yeah, of course.
My mom came to visit me in 2019 for my graduation ceremony at UBC. And it was a beautiful ceremony. Like, I don't know, like people who are on the stage that didn't stand up, that don't normally stand up when you're passing, they stood up for me. The deputy and the president of UBC like asked to hug me on the stage. Like I was the only student in my class that they hugged on stage instead of like the regular handshake. And my mom was there and she saw that. So she knows that I'm creating beyond like just talking about the hijab and whatever other things that I speak about when it comes to like people's sovereignty and autonomy and personal power. And the funny part and the most healing moment was when we were at the airport, sitting at Tim Hortons. She's leaving. We're waiting for her time to board. And she looks at me and she says, you know, I've always known that you will be on stages speaking, but I just never knew that it will be about those things. And yeah, it just like, whoa, like she saw something in me, and maybe, I don't know if I'm speaking on her behalf, but it feels like she's also tugging the allowing me to live and wanting the life she knows is best for me. Yeah.
That's great. That's wonderful. I'm glad that you still have your family in your life like that, and that there's such wonderful people and supportive. That's a very happy story that you don't get to hear very often. So
yeah,
nice to hear that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to open it up to everybody now, and we will take some questions. We've got some things in the chat here, but if you have a question for Amal, please raise your hand. Click on the little hand icon. Rena.
And unfortunately, I need to go, but I wanted to tell Amal I spent almost 4 years in Saudi Arabia from 1999 to 2003. And I felt like I had gone to a previous century, which I've never known before. Okay, so it's very good to know what's starting to happen and for you to be here. And I wish you all the best. You're going to help a lot of other women from your culture.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Are you in Vancouver?
I am currently in Ottawa. I was in Vancouver, then Kelowna. I was in Montreal. I just moved to Ottawa.
You live in
last
Ottawa?
Saturday.
Okay, you live in Ottawa?
Just temporarily. I'm in an Airbnb temporarily.
I'm from there and I'm going there sometime in December. It'd be nice to maybe possibly connect.
I'm here in December, so connect with me. Yeah.
Okay, well, maybe through Yasmine, you can get my email address.
Sure.
Okay, I'm sorry, I really have to go, but this has been wonderful.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you, Rena.
Right.
Take care. You've got a question from Erkan and another question from Lois. Erkan, why don't you go first?
Okay, thanks. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold today, so I'm not really, my voice is not so good. I was wondering, we will assume for a moment that wokeism hasn't happened, but
That what?
that, you know, the kind of woke culture hasn't, you know, changed the, anyway, never mind, changed the democratic kind of makeup. But to what extent do you think Islam is compatible with kind of Western democratic principles, if we can talk about such things, if we can, by which I mean, you know, the freedom to think independently, to permit differences of opinion, and you know, universal suffrage as we have it now, and these kinds of things. To what extent, you know, what would you keep, and what would you, if there were certain things you were forced to keep relating to Islam, which things would you keep, and which things would you, you know, reject? Yeah, and to what extent do you think Islam is compatible with so-called Western values?
Couple of things come up to me from your question, and the first one is like this video. I'm going to speak about it from a personal lived experience. When I first moved here and I was still fully covered, and people will start to tell me things, you know, like that it's wrong, or it's bad, or like there is hate in it, or whatever. So like, I hated being subjectified to being told that my belief system is wrong. I hated being subjectified to people telling me that this is like not whatever, like some things that I like fully believe in now. But at that time, like, I don't think I can speak to say like people who believe this or people who do this are bad or they don't understand. It's just like, do believe whatever you want is perhaps, which is compatible with like liberal ideologies of like freedom of religion. There is so much complexity underneath that. And I think Yasmine's story is one of the evidence of sometimes it can fail when the court told her that your family's from a different culture, we can't help. In the West, where I like faced the same thing in Saudi Arabia. So that was like, that is jarring. And I do believe sometimes it can fail. On the other hand, what I wouldn't keep is one of my family members, I'm not gonna name who they are, is taken up on themselves to send me religious videos to inspire me, the least to say. And the last one he sent me was a couple of days ago, and it was titled Personal Freedom. I never listened to the things he sent me, but this one I listened to because it was made by my best friend's father. So it was like one of the sheikhs that I grew up with. Like we went on religious trips with him. I like listened to him speak and like would go on to like ceremony and like listen to him during our like religious celebrations. Obviously from a microphone and a screen in our female portion of the venue, while the men sat with him. Because it was that person, I cared to listen and give it time. And it was directed towards women, and it was directed towards personal freedom and the hijab. And it was that like in Islam, there is no religion, there is no freedom. If your freedom is there is no personal freedom if your personal freedom is going against the person, this who created you. And that didn't sit well for me. I was like, I don't know. I wanna, yeah. I you know, like I think maybe it's romanticized, like that idea of unconditional love. And
well, that rests on the premise that you accept that you were created, as it were? I mean, are you an atheist or are you still?
Well, like the question, the example that this person gave was, if you go to a company and you apply for a job and you get accepted for the job, you have to wear the uniform that this job requires. You have to show up at the time that this job requires. I'm like, I don't think those are the. He's like, if you have personal freedom, but you can't do personal freedom inside this job that is your role. I'm like, well, like, yeah, as you said, like you have to accept that this is your role. And yeah.
You don't have to apply for that job though, and you can quit.
or be like, I don't like this.
Yeah.
I think the company should change this, or I think you should accept that I want to do this. Or like there's so many layers of what that is. And in many regions of the world, like Islam doesn't equal hijab.
Well, of course, there's no opportunity to opt out of the contract anyway, right? With God, right? So, and we are all, so we're told, all formed with our religiosity in the womb, right? We have everything about us is formed in the womb, right? So if we are with everything about us is predestined, predetermined, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before we're even conceived, before we're even carried by our own mothers, everything about us is predetermined. So there's no option to refuse this contract. So, and this is the thing about when Muslims say there's no compulsion in religion, I think that is kind of even Orwellian sort of double speak, because what they mean is, what they surely must mean is that they say that in defense of Islam. They say it as if to say, well, we don't force anybody. But what I think they really mean, which is what I'm writing in my book at the moment, so anyway, is that what they really mean is that if you dig a little deeper, there can't be any compulsion in religion if it's already predetermined. And if somebody is an atheist, then they've been made that way by God, who's playing games and who is playing favorites with his creations, right? So to my mind, I mean, I don't know, Yasmine and others, what do you think?
Well, I actually want to take it away. Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to say that, like, feels like you're talking about a different conversation, Erkan, like it feels like you're taking it around religion and Islam, and I don't think that's been the dialogue that Yasmine and I have been having. So
let's bring it back
around my journey or anything around being, anything that around what I shared, but I appreciate.
Oh, sorry, I thought you were talking about the contract. You know, you were making an analogy. You made the analogy between a contract and, so maybe I misunderstood.
It was the recording.
Maybe I misunderstood. Me. Sorry.
It was the recording that I was speaking about. He was making the analogy of going to a job and personal freedom within the job. It wasn't my, my analogy. I was referring to the video. Yeah.
I was just commenting. I was commenting on the analogy itself. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I'm just going to bring it back to more of Amal's story. So I'm going to ask Lois's question that she wrote for us in the chat here. And I know it's going to be a long question, but maybe if you could just succinctly respond, Amal, if you're comfortable. The question is, how was your marriage arranged and why?
Maybe an English question for you, Yasmine, first. Like you said, like you used the word fixed instead of arranged. What is the difference? I thought it's the same thing.
So arranged is just generally the vernacular that's used. And it generally comes from more of an Indian tradition of arranging marriages immediately. So as soon as the child is born, They say,
Hmm.
okay, well, this child, this baby girl will be married to this baby boy.
Okay.
So it's fully arranged from the beginning. So the way it happens in our communities in the Arab world and in the Muslim world is more like it happens when you're a teenager as an adult. It's not happening as a baby. And parents are very involved. And sometimes the potential bride and groom barely see each other. And so but we still call it an arranged marriage. So those are two different ways. So when you were calling it a fixed marriage, to me, that I thought that you were just trying to clarify that this was a marriage that was sort of fixed or planned by the families, but it wasn't what we call a love marriage. So the other kind of marriage, which is frowned upon and not for good girls. So so yeah, so she's asking if you could tell us a bit about how you ended up in this marriage and why.
So yes, it wasn't arranged. Like, it wasn't like, oh, those two people are going to marry each other. It was his family proposed to my family. My family was a yes, so they asked me if I am a yes. Everybody was very excited about him. Like, he checks off all the, like, if you were on like online dating and you're like, you have a list of like requirements, like he met the requirements of an online dating if it was that whatever you like put on the profile or like your application. I'm making a joke right now. It wasn't like that. But he meets all the criteria, like good family, good job, like stability, all of the things, like family name. And I kind of did the thing that is allowed in Islam. So you're allowed to see the person one time. It's called Shuf al-Shar'iyya, which is like the religious or the allowed visit, whatever. And we saw, I actually, like, I said, I'm not going to say yes to a photo because they sent me a photo of him. And I said, like, I want to see him. I want to meet him in person. And my mom was on board and my family was on board. One of my uncles was like, this is not how we do it, but it's fine. And so my family suggested it to his family and they obviously agreed. So we met. And I just like remember, like, I was laying the ground, you know, I was like, I don't want to be like a homestay mom. Like, I want to work. I want to finish my degree. Like, I want to travel. I don't want to have kids right away. I'm still very young. And he was like, yes, yes, yes. And it was just like such a great connection, you know, it's like best case scenario. And I like genuinely like said, yes, I was very excited. I loved him and he loved me. It was generally a happy, very happy marriage. And there are the emotional abuse in the middle of it that part of it family, part of it is more complex. You can read more about it in my blog.
No, I was doing that because you didn't love him before you married him, though.
No. I said yes, and then like the love came after. Yes. Yeah. Did I answer the question? But yeah, you can read more details on my blog, on my website, myname.mylastname.com.
Yeah, so you know the old first comes love, then comes marriage. No. First comes marriage, then comes the baby in the baby carriage, and then perhaps maybe there's love, but it's not guaranteed to be part of the equation. So let me see if I can skim through these and see if we have any other questions. Alvina had to leave, but she wanted to say that she's really proud of you, Amal, and she wishes you the best in the future. So she's sending you greetings from the Netherlands.
Ooh, hi.
And Sahara, who we've got Sahara here, and Aliyah, who were both Forgotten Feminists before, that I had conversations with both of these wonderful women. And Sahara says, I'm so proud of her courage, Amal. Congratulations on your freedom. You deserve it, girl. Great job. You need to connect with these two women because they're amazing and I love them as much as I love you. Trisha is asking, oh, Sharia courts in the West, such as the US, UK, US, and Canada.
I didn't
I don't know if that's
that.
something that you're comfortable talking about. Yeah, there are, Erkan also mentioned that there are over 100 Sharia courts in the UK right now, which is obviously problematic.
Is it Sharia court or Shia?
No, Sharia.
Sharia.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so what happens is obviously a woman who's going to get a divorce using the UK laws is going to have a much easier route. Or whether it's custody battles or, you know, whatever the situation is, the UK laws are going to be much more equitable for women. But instead, these women are forced to go to Sharia courts where they're not getting treated with nearly the same respect, definitely not equality. And so it is a real problem. I saw that somebody wrote Canada, but I don't know if it's a big deal in Canada. I honestly don't know if there are courts in Canada and the US. Somebody in the comments said there was, but I am familiar with the ones in the UK for sure. So Erkan.
No, I just wondered what you think of that concept, Amal. What do you think of those arriving here? Religious law courts arriving on Western shores. What do you think about that?
I mean, because we have Jewish. I was in Montreal. I lived in Montreal. I just moved to Ottawa, and Quebec. I don't know if you're familiar with Canadian law. And Quebec in particular was trying to pass a law that bans all religious symbols, and like you can't go to work wearing like a religious symbol or wear a hijab or all of that. And
if you work in the public sphere, so if you work for the government.
Right, yes. Thank you for that addition. And Montreal, which is like the mountain that everybody goes to or whatever, like has this massive cross on top of it. Yeah, so I think your question is like, you can draw it, like the fact that Western society celebrates Christian holidays. Why? I think a lot is like centered around religion. And I think like we can talk about Islam in the same way we're talking about how we're doing all of it and how there is a cross in the middle of the biggest city of this province that's trying to remove any religious symbols around like the public sector. Yeah. Very vague answer or very specific answer, depending on what you're looking for.
Yeah, I think that I don't mean to put words in your mouth, Erkan, but I think that he was talking more about things that were going to control people. So celebrating Christmas or having a big cross or even, you know, celebrating Hanukkah or celebrating Eid, like none of these things are going to be negative. But having a Sharia court is definitely negative. If you are a Muslim woman in the UK, you're going to have a much more restrictive experience in a Sharia court versus in a secular court. And this is, you know, sort of the conversation that we were having before about in Saudi Arabia, how things were so difficult for you. It's because it was Sharia courts. Obviously, I want no religion in any court systems whatsoever, but we spent a lot of time in Canada getting Christianity out of the schools, getting it out of the court systems. In America, they still have some lingering issues like with the abortion debate, which I think is just rooted so much in religion. And in other countries like in South America and stuff like that, religion restricts Catholic women from being able to get a divorce, for example. So I think that at the end of the day, no religion should be anywhere near any kinds of laws, because first of all, those laws are based on like 1,000-year-old documents, and I hope that humanity has progressed beyond, you know, those documents 1,000 years ago, or 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. And then also, it's always women that end up losing. It's always women that end up getting the shitty end of the stick when those religious courts are allowed to control people. Erkan, I'm going to try and wrap it up, but I will ask you if you have something else to say or a question, that we can just keep it more to Amal's story, because she didn't really want to get pulled into the religion discussion. I know that's something that you like to get into and something that I like to get into, but this is the Amal show today. And so we wanted to just keep it about her inspiring story and the work that she does today. So she did mention her website, and I will share a link to that at the bottom of this video. And when you go to her website, you'll get to see the TED Talk that we kept on referring to. And I just wanted to say as well that Amal and I have partnered in Free Hearts, Free Minds. So she's also supportive of a lot of the clients that we get coming to us.
Yeah, it's fine. I was just gonna mention that something about the cultural thing about Christianity, that it's unavoidably kind of, the culture of Christianity unavoidably sort of is suffused throughout Western societies in many ways. And I think even, you know, there are sort of remnants of Christianity. So like I went to a Protestant school, for example, when I was a kid, and we would sing hymns in the morning and things like that, but there was no, it wasn't very sinister, you know. But I just think that these things are just, you know, sort of the language of Christianity just, you know, it's just dispersed throughout, that's the best way I can put it, throughout the institutions and things like that, without really being sort of aggressive or whatever like that. So I think there is a difference.
It has been defanged over time, yeah, but we still have to be careful, because, you know, those fangs can sharpen very quickly.
Yeah.
So just wanted to give a little bit of an update here. Hamid sent a note saying that in Canada in the late 90s, there was an attempt to create Sharia courts in Toronto, but there was a huge backlash, so it failed. So alhamdulillah for that. And then you've got a message from Amal saying, or sorry, from Trisha saying, thank you, Amal. Your work is very important. Thank you for shining a light, and just thanking you for your time. And so I think that I would also like to say that as well. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us today, Amal. And I always love speaking with you. And I did read through your blog today, but I had to stop when I got to the one about your ex, because it was just really heavy. But I look forward to reading the rest of your blogs, because you are a gifted writer.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And stay posted for my book.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And we'll see you next time on Forgotten Feminists. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Yasmine.
Thank you.